Remember that feeling, opening a fresh pack of McDonald's fries back in the day?
Mm.
That smell, the anticipation of that first crispy bite.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, imagine that feeling mixed with the sinking realization that the game you were playing to win $1 million was totally rigged.
Oh, wow.
Today, we're diving deep into two stories that might just make you question everything you thought you knew. One, a chilling cold case that gripped a small town, and the other, a nationwide scam that played out right under our noses, the McDonald's monopoly scandal.
It's fascinating how both of these stories, though vastly different, tap into our sense of trust and how easily it can be shattered.
Exactly. Let's start with a journey back to the late 1980s, to the coastal town of New Bedford, Massachusetts. Picture quaint streets, charming harbors, but beneath the surface, a darkness is brewing.
What's particularly striking about this case is the sheer number of victims. Within a single year, 11 women vanished their lives, cut short, most of them found along desolate stretches of highway. And yet, decades later, the New Bedford highway killer remains a chilling enigma.
Our sources, like the book Shallow Graves, paint a heartbreaking picture of these women. Many struggling with addiction involved in sex work, their disappearances initially met with a dismissive shrug from authorities.
This is a classic example of how societal biases can directly impact investigations. These women, already facing immense challenges, were essentially deemed less worthy of justice. Their lifestyles, instead of being seen as a cry for help, became a reason to turn a blind eye. And that delay, that initial lack of urgency, allowed a predator to continue operating in the shadows.
It's a stark reminder that justice should be blind to social standing or personal struggles. Each of these women deserved a thorough investigation, a chance to be seen as more than just a statistic.
Absolutely. And the sources highlight how this bias permeated the entire case. Think about it, a missing lawyer or a prominent socialite would have sparked an immediate and full-scale investigation. But for these women, their disappearances were met with indifference, even suspicion.
It's heartbreaking, and it makes you wonder how many other cases have been mishandled or simply forgotten due to similar biases.
It's a question that haunts many unsolved cases. But let's delve further into the New Bedford case itself. We have a handful of potential suspects, each with their own tangled web of connections to the victims. One name that keeps popping up is Kenneth Pont, a local lawyer.
Now, Pont is a complicated figure. He knew many of the victims, even helped create missing person posters for one of them, but he was also battling his own demons, struggling with addiction.
What's interesting here is that addiction itself can create a fog of uncertainty. Memory becomes unreliable behavior, unpredictable. So while Pont was considered a suspect, his struggles with substance abuse made it incredibly difficult to assess his true involvement.
He was even indicted for one of the murders, but the charges were eventually dropped due to lack of evidence. He died in 2010, taking his secrets, if he had any, to the grave.
Adding another layer of complexity are two other individuals. Tony DeGrazia and Daniel Tavares both had histories of violence against women and were connected to the New Bedford area.
DeGrazia was a known drug dealer with a reputation for brutality. He even bragged about killing one of the victims, but there wasn't enough evidence to link him conclusively to any of the murders.
And then there's Tavares, who actually confessed to killing several women in the area. However, his confessions were often inconsistent, and none of the victims he admitted to killing matched the profiles of the New Bedford Highway killer's victims.
So we have three potential suspects, each with their own disturbing past and links to the victims, yet the case remains unsolved. It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, leaving the families of these women in a constant state of grief and uncertainty.
This case serves as a chilling reminder of how vulnerability coupled with societal biases can have devastating consequences. It highlights the importance of community awareness support for those struggling with addiction and advocating for vulnerable populations.
It's a reminder that we can't just rely on systems to protect us. We have to be active participants in creating a society that values and protects all its members. But for now, the New Bedford Highway killer remains a haunting reminder that justice is sometimes elusive, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and unhealed wounds.
And it compels us to consider the systemic issues that allowed this tragedy to occur and persist. What can we do to ensure that future investigations prioritize the safety and well-being of all individuals, regardless of their background or circumstances?
It's a question that deserves serious consideration, not just in New Bedford, but in every community. But for now, let's shift gears to another story that, while seemingly less grim, exposes another kind of betrayal of trust.
One that involves those iconic Golden Arches, a board game, and a whole lot of stolen dreams. Remember the thrill of peeling back a McDonald's Monopoly game piece? That hope of winning a free Big Mac, maybe even $1,000,000?
We all remember the frenzy, the anticipation, the collecting of those little pieces.
We'll get ready for a reality check. Because that game that captured our imaginations for years was actually rigged for over a decade. We'll get ready for a reality check because that game that captured our imaginations for years was actually rigged for over a decade.
It's true. The McDonald's Monopoly scam, as it came to be known, was a masterclass in deception, orchestrated by a seemingly ordinary man named Jerry Jacobson.
Our sources, like the HBO docuseries McMillions, take us deep inside this scheme, and it's a wild ride. Jacobson was the head of security at Simon Marketing, the company responsible for running the Monopoly promotion. You'd think the guy in charge of security would be the last person to pull off a heist, but that's exactly what makes this story so fascinating.
It's like something straight out of a Hollywood movie. This unassuming guy figures out a way to intercept the winning game pieces before they even reach the restaurants. He replaces them with duds and then starts distributing the stolen prizes to a network of accomplices across the country.
And here's where it gets even crazier. His initial motivation wasn't even pure greed. It started with wanting to help out a few friends and family members, but then the scope of the operation just exploded.
It's almost like he got caught up in the thrill of it all. The more he got away with it, the bigger the scheme became. He was recruiting people he met everywhere, from his butcher to a random guy on a cruise ship.
And the web of accomplices just kept growing. It included individuals from all walks of life, even someone connected to the Colombo crime family. This was a multi-million-dollar operation with a cast of characters that you couldn't make up.
Can you imagine being the FBI agent assigned to this case? It must have been like trying to untangle a giant plate of spaghetti.
The FBI's investigation is a fascinating story in itself. They had to get creative, going undercover as a fake film crew throwing a phony winners reunion in Las Vegas, all to gather evidence and extract confessions. It was a high-stakes game of cat and mouse.
And talk about a plot twist. Remember that feel-good story about the $1,000,000 winning ticket that was anonymously donated to St. Jude Children's Hospital? Well, guess what? It turns out that was Jacobson, too.
It's a fascinating wrinkle in this whole saga. Here's a guy orchestrating a massive fraud, but also capable of this incredible act of generosity. It really makes you question the complexities of human nature.
Right. Was he trying to ease his conscience? Or was it a calculated move to throw off suspicion? It's a question that continues to intrigue those who followed this case.
And then there's the timing of Jacobson's trial. It happened to coincide with the aftermath of 9/11, a time when the nation was grappling with an unimaginable tragedy.
So this case that had captivated the media and the public for months just sort of faded into the background. It's a reminder of how external events can sometimes overshadow even the most compelling stories.
But even though it didn't get the same level of attention, Jacobson eventually pleaded guilty, served 3 years in prison, and paid millions in restitution. However, the story of the McDonald's Monopoly scam continues to fascinate. It's a reminder that even the most familiar brands and promotions can be vulnerable to corruption.
And it speaks to that same theme we discussed with the New Bedford case, our tendency to trust systems even when those systems might not deserve our blind faith.
Exactly. We assume fairness and integrity, especially when it comes to something as seemingly innocent as a fast food game. But this case shows us that even the most seemingly harmless things can be manipulated for personal gain.
So as we reflect on these two stories, what are some of the key takeaways? What insights can we glean from these deep dives?
For starters, both cases underscore the importance of critical thinking. We can't just accept things at face value. We need to be willing to ask questions, to dig deeper, to challenge assumptions.
It's about cultivating a healthy skepticism without becoming cynical or distrustful of everything. It's about being informed and engaged and recognizing that even the most established systems can be flawed. It's about cultivating a healthy skepticism without becoming cynical or distrustful of everything. It's about being informed and engaged and recognizing that even the most established systems can be flawed.
Right. And maybe most importantly, these stories remind us that we have a role to play in shaping the systems we rely on. We can't just be passive consumers or bystanders. We need to hold those in power accountable and advocate for change when we see injustice or corruption.
It's about being active citizens, informed participants in our communities, whether it's supporting organizations that fight for vulnerable populations or simply speaking out against wrongdoing. Every action we take can make a difference.
It's true. It's about those choices, the values we prioritize, the actions we take, the voices we raise. Those things have a ripple effect. They shape the world around us, for better or worse.
So as you go about your day, think about the systems you interact with, the businesses you patronize, the organizations you support, the news you consume. Are you engaging with them critically? Are you holding them to a high standard?
Yeah. Because complacency can be just as dangerous as outright corruption. It allows these systems to continue operating unchecked, potentially harming individuals and communities in the process.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from a chilling unsolved case to a nationwide fast food scam. But at their core, these stories are about more than just the facts. They're about the human impact, the erosion of trust, and the importance of demanding better.
They're about recognizing that even in seemingly ordinary situations, there can be hidden depths, layers of complexity that we might not initially perceive.
And that's what these deep dives are all about,
Mhm.
encouraging you to look beyond the surface, to question, to explore, and to never stop learning.
Because the pursuit of knowledge and understanding is a lifelong journey, and it's one that we're all on together.
So keep those curiosity muscles flexed, keep asking those tough questions, and keep diving deep into the stories that matter.
You never know what fascinating insights and connections you might uncover along the way.